Well, good evening and welcome to Love, Live, Tell 2019. Great to see so many of you here. Great to see lots of familiar faces who I haven't seen since this time last year. Thank you so much for coming. And a special welcome to you if you're here for the first time. My name's Ian Roberts. I'm the Chief Executive of Christianity Explorer Ministries. And we know at evenings like this it's impossible to get around everybody, but that doesn't stop us trying. So if we've not actually met you, if I've not met you, and you have got a few minutes at the end, it'd be great just if you could come up and say hello. It really would be good to get to know you personally. If you haven't got time to see me, please do say hello to one of the rest of the team who are around. We've got a table around there at the side, so make sure you don't go away without at least having greeted one of us. So good to have you along. A special welcome also to those who we certainly won't be able to meet in person, and that's those of you who are listening online. For the first time last year, we did this, and it was really exciting because we had people from all over the world who were tuning in, and so to see the comments coming through, it was quite extraordinary, really. So we have Phil this evening, who is going to be listening to your comments, and hopefully he might be able to reply to one or two if he's not too busy doing other things. I may not be able to see them this evening, but I'll certainly look forward to catching up with those when they come in. So, what have we got in store for you this evening? Well, we've got, in a word, stories, quite a few of them. Stories of people, stories of places, stories of people coming to faith, and stories of people growing in their faith. As a ministry, we've been going, it depends how you calculate it, but call it about 20 years, really, from when we first started. And this phrase, love, live, tell, it's something we first came up with, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago, because we were looking for something to describe what we did. And it seemed quite a good way of capturing what we do. So it was a sort of tagline, if you like. Craig down there and I were in this meeting when we were working it through. But it sort of laid there for a few years, but it feels to me over the last few years that it's become more than just what we do, but it's almost a little bit more like who we are. It's what we represent. Because the heartbeat of all our resources is that we want to help people love the gospel. We are convinced that it's the foundation of everything, that we need to be captivated by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Without that, there's nothing. But, of course, once you've been captivated by the gospel, then an inevitable outpouring of that is that we will start living it. And, of course, one of the major things of living it is actually telling other people about it as well. So the point is, our resources don't just help you love the gospel for yourself, but they also help you communicate it clearly to other people. So that's who we are. It's what we're all about, if you like. And we've just been thrilled to see how this has grown over the years. To be honest, we've been a little bit staggered by it. We never, ever expected that we'd have grown the way we have done. And probably the most staggering thing of all is the way that things have just exploded all around the world. We say we're over 110 countries. It's actually close to 120. I did a count up yesterday. Absolutely staggering. Can't really quite believe it, how it has grown. So what we want to do this evening is just to try and give you a good flavour of that, really, so you go away getting an impression of what's going on. And the stories we've got for you, they come from all over the world. At the same time, we've got to launch a new book. We've got a fundraising campaign to tell you about, and then at the end of the evening, we've got a very special guest coming to speak to us. So there's lots to get through. Rico Tice, who I think most of you will know, is going to be up in a few minutes to take on the next bit of the evening. But the first story we've got is on film. So it's a film about a lady called Katerina. So sit back and enjoy this, and Rico will be up in a few minutes.
I grew up in Ukraine and have fond memories with my family and friends at school. I studied in Poland and later we moved to the UK with my then boyfriend. On the surface, my life looked good. We built a successful business. We had 2 children and we bought a house. but inside I didn't feel satisfied. I felt I never had enough. I was constantly worrying. I felt lonely, worthless, stressed and depressed. It was like I was existing without a real purpose. I felt that something had to change. I met Lisby, who was a mum that I met when my kids were starting school, and we became friends quite quickly. But at the end of the school year, she told me that her boys would be going to a different school, so she would no longer be around. Then one evening I got a message from her inviting us along to church, and I wanted to keep in contact with her, so I said yes. I've always believed in God, that He existed, but He seemed so far away. I remember church in Ukraine being very boring and scary for children, and I was really surprised when I went to Lisby's church for the first time. It was in a school hall, which alone made it different to what I knew before. It was a bit weird, but I loved the whole thing, the people, the atmosphere and the music. And I was so impressed that day because they were praying for Ukraine in service. So we kept going along for the next few weeks, me and the boys. And later that summer, a well-known actor who had struggled with mental health problems, he committed suicide. And I hadn't really told anyone that I had this sense of depression. So I told Lisby that I wasn't really fine and I needed to talk. And she asked if she could meet up to pray with me as I told her about my life and heard her pray for me, I realized that I really needed this gut thing that she had. So we started reading a Bible together, and also we did the Christianity Explored course. I was fascinated. I wanted to know more and more and kept asking questions. I heard of Jesus before, but not like this. For the first time I saw that He's here and He's alive and you can talk to Him anytime and anywhere. One of the stories in the Bible that I kept reading again and again was when Jesus calmed the storm, which is recorded in Mark's Gospel. During the storm, the disciples were really afraid, and for me, that would be the hardest thing, to stay calm in the middle of a storm. I would have been panicking like the disciples did, but Jesus says there's no need to be afraid when He's in the boat, because He is in control. And the more I've read the story, the easier it became to stay calm in the storms of life. At the end of the Christianity Explored course, Lisby asked me if I believed that Jesus died for me and if I was ready to accept Him into my life. I said yes, and we said a little prayer thanking Jesus for dying for me, asking Him to forgive me and to be in charge of my life. And Lisby said, "Oh, that's it, you've become a Christian." It was so simple, yet so life-changing. But it didn't fix anything straight away. It actually all went downhill. My partner's drinking habit turned into alcoholism, and I ended up having to choose between him and my children. So unfortunately we split up. And that was when the church became a lifeline. We were actually homeless, but we stayed with different friends from church for a few months at a time. And so far I've managed 2 years as a single parent of 2, homeless, broke, and not knowing if I can even stay in this country that my boys call home. But I've never felt shaken, because God has always been by my side, He has made me stronger and kinder, wiser, happier and calmer. Knowing that my Heavenly Father knows me, loves me and cares for me and is always there for me, it's changed everything that I thought I knew about myself and my life. I could talk for hours about big and little miracles that God has done for me so far. And sometimes my friends ask me, how do you stay so positive and happy and calm when there's horrible things going on? But it's because I know that God is in control. And it was one of my favorite parts of becoming a Christian, is giving up control. Before, I had to be in charge of everything and everyone, but now I can give up control. It's not that I don't care anymore, but I just don't try to control things in the same way. I know that God is in control, and that's what matters.
Wonderful. And I think Katrina and Lisby are here tonight. Where are they? Where are Katrina and Lisby? Where are they? I'm sure I saw them earlier. Stand up. Do stand up, everyone. Let's give them a clap. Well done. Great to have you here. And just to say, my children would be terrified of that dog, so wonderful. Rachel, have a seat. Let's chat, Rachel, about this book, Finding More, and Katrina's story is the last one in there. But just in it, of all the interviews you did, obviously Katrina was your favourite one. But what was your second favourite one?
Favourite.
Just give us your...
Yeah, so we've got 11 different people's stories in here, and I think the one that maybe sticks with me the most is a lady called Rachel, and she was just so full of fun. She was really fun and clearly very sharp, and she actually became a Christian at university at Yale. She is a lesbian, and she's just talked about how growing up she thought that Christians were stupid intellectually and bigots, and she felt very much rejected by that, and yet she just couldn't shake this curiosity about matters of faith. And so she talks about how she was Googling Jesus secretly on her laptop, and then she stole a copy of Mere Christianity from a friend's bookshelf. And as she was reading it, she just saw what Jesus offers and knew that was a deal she had to take. And it was just really wonderful to hear her chatting about, how that intersected with her sexuality and just working through those issues. So she was a real joy to meet.
And it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, what I loved about the book is the way that people's presuppositions about Christian faith are articulated in real life. Mm-hmm. So you give it to a friend, and, the friend that does think we're bigots, well, there's someone here who echoes that. And I thought that was very powerful. Time and again, Larry, the guy who just said, look, I just didn't think it was true, and I needed evidence, and then you watch that journey. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's a wonderful book to give to someone, because it's there reflecting back what they're thinking, and then you see the journey they went on. Yeah. I'll give you my favourite bit. Shall I? This is so my son's godmother, Nikki Woollett, is in here. And this is just one bit that I just found very moving. There was one particular conversation that struck in Nikki's mind. My sister and I were talking about Christian things, and she got quite upset and said, "The problem is, Nikki, unless you believe this, you're going to go to hell." I think she'd got to the point where she tried being soft. She was tired of being soft and gentle. We'd had lots of conversations. She'd given me stuff to read, but I wasn't taking it seriously. After that, she said that after she said that, I totally closed down. I thought, well, if that's what it's about, then I'm never going to become a Christian. But then from there, after her sister crossed the pain line and said something serious that was a very costly thing to say, she came to faith. And I often feel that with Christianity Explored, what we're trying to do is say the tough bits that sometimes the church isn't saying. So it was lovely to read that and see how that had helped Nikki, being given information about what her sister really believed. Yeah. Just tell me a little bit about the use of story in the culture. So Rachel, just on that front, here we are, we've got a book of 11 stories. Tell us a little bit about how you view that.
I mean, I think that video from Katerina really sums it up, doesn't it? Because there's something really powerful about a personal testimony, and just undeniably the work of God in her life. It's very hard to come against that. So I think that's why personal stories are really powerful in evangelism.
And in our culture, everybody, you know that I mean, one of the lines is "He with the best stories wins." So we are a culture where the sort of postmodern critique is everything's a power narrative, but you must be allowed to tell your own story. So to hear someone's story is just something where we say, look, if you've got any intellectual honesty, you will at least listen to their stories. So I just find time and again as I read it, I was thrilled. What's the journey of the book? So it's people's individual stories, but was there a sort of a theme as you were writing?
We really wanted the book to sort of build up a holistic picture of the gospel, and so we've done that through the identity mission call thing, which obviously is at the core of Christianity Explored, and so we wanted it to be at the core of this book as well. So the early stories are about people encountering Jesus for the first time. We've got a lady called Katie who was, researched all different philosophies, tried other religions, and then was just blown away by Jesus. People questioning the validity of the Gospels and just being wowed by Christ. And then the middle sort of stories are people as they're sort of grappling with sin and grace and the cross and the resurrection. And then the final few stories are all about Jesus' call on people's life. So that's, people who really grappled with what that looks like to follow him. So we got a guy from a Jewish background and, the kind of tension that caused in his family and how following Jesus was still something he knew was worth it.
Yeah, so the theme of Identity Mission Call and some people doing Christianity Explored through it. Let me just ask Rick up. Where's Rick? Because he's one of the people who was in here. Rick was a doctor, but Rick, now a church planter. You're going to go and church plant. Do you want to grab a microphone, bro? And just tell us a little bit about coming to faith yourself. So it was lovely to hear the story in here. What's your background?
So I came from a Hindu background, growing up for the first 22 years. Remember going to the temple. We had a shrine at home. Used to do that weekly and religiously.
Vegetarian?
Yes, absolutely. Until I started eating meat, swapping my meat sandwiches at school.
And
then one of my friends sort of dobbed me in.
Yeah, it was very funny. A girl ran up to your mother and said, "I love the vegetarian sandwiches," and that wasn't a great moment, was it? In terms
no,
of
it wasn't.
Yeah.
What on earth are you doing, Rick? So actually from childhood I was sort of breaking the kind of religious mold, and then went to. Sorry, you wanted to know a bit more about. So I think religion. I think a big thing which is in the book was like what I did. Was so much more than what I did, but it was who I was. So just, cultural, things, cultural things, religious things, family, it all just became part of your identity. So if you would give up something like, being a vegetarian, it would be insulting to the family. And so then giving up religion was what my family found quite insulting.
And as I read, I was very struck by, just in the chapter on your life, that the sort of sudden sense of sin was much bigger than you thought it was. There you were, you're a doctor, you're from a home, you're achieving, but you did just have a bit of a journey into sin, didn't you? As I sort of read.
I did, yeah. Well, I think what did it for me, just going through. Learning who Jesus was, the miracles he performed, and got to a point where I thought, okay, so he's innocent, he's claimed to be God, he's shown he's God, but he's dying on a cross. Like God doesn't die on I was confused, but I was also struck, and when he was dying, I thought, even then he was praying and showing love and compassion to the people who are putting him to death. And that really got me grappling and asking questions of, why did he do that? What drove him to that point? And then the realization, because just of the pressure that was put on me, as a child and as an adult, being a Hindu, that, if you've got to strive to be the best you can, because then the gods will think good of you. And if you're bad or you make mistakes or whatever, then, you'll be punished. Grace was never a feature. Love was not really much of a feature in that. I slowly realized, actually, well, look, I've not achieved what I could achieve and what I've wanted. There was a hole. I used to let myself down, my family down. So how much more have I offended God and let him down? And at that point, I realized, well, I'm not perfect. I'm just the awareness, the dawning realization of, well, I am a sinner. And that's why Jesus, who is God, innocent, died, so that I could be right with God.
And that was on a course, was it? On a Christian Explored course, you saw that? Or?
Not really. So on the course, I was grappling, and then it was, much after the course when I went deeper into those conversations, one-to-one. But it sort of sprung from the course.
And tell us where you're planting the church, just as we finish.
So the east of London, it's still in the, it's a blank sheet of paper at the moment, where my wife and I are in various conversations and stuff. But the plan would be to move this year with a view to reaching second, third generation British Hindus, but also just a diverse church. God willing.
Rick, wonderful. Well, that's what we're trying to do in the UK. So we're now going to look outwards. We're going to try and look around the world a bit. So let's move to the next bit of the evening. Rachel, thank you so much for this work. I know there are lots of copies. You've got a copy yourself. So please do use it. I was staggered by the way in which this articulates, I think, what the non-Christian is thinking, puts flesh on it in a real life, and then you see the journey of God opening blind eyes. So please do take advantage. We're thrilled with the resource. The people who've come to faith have really grounded and suffered, some of them. You heard Katerina's story, so we hope there'll be a real reality to it as well. Super. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Well, my hair is good, so let's start.
It's 10 years now since we started Christianity Explored programs in Uganda and East Africa at large, and it has been a blessing through the training conferences that we conduct like this one. This training program now has about over 600-700 people, and for the last 10 years CE has gone around Uganda and the entire East Africa, and we thank God for the support that our partners, our friends have been continually giving to the cause of this good work. We praise the Lord and we thank you very, very much. Over hundreds of thousands of people have gone through this program, and very many people confess, especially church leaders, through our Bible training program. They confess that this material has helped them very much in conducting inductive Bible studies. We praise the Lord and we thank you very, very much for being there for us.
We run Christianity Explore in Mandarin language here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And we find that CE is a great resource for us as we run our evangelism. We run CE twice a year as a main part of our evangelism effort. It's very helpful resources for us because it's a clear and yet a comprehensive presentation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I use the word comprehensive because once we have a Christian who has been Christian for 5-6 years, and yet when she come through the course, she said that she learned many new things. It helped us to understand more of her faith in Jesus Christ. So it is a comprehensive understanding of who Jesus is, but yet it is very clear presentation because we have non-Christians who are not churchgoer who come along to all our sessions and they can truly understand what is being presented and they are being engaged with the message that has been presented by Rico.
We would like to thank the Christianity Explored Ministries for all the support they have been providing to make these valuable materials, the Christianity Explored and the Soul curriculum available in Arabic, as there was a dire need for such valuable resources in the Arabic language. We are also grateful for the several workshops that took place in the MENA region. 7 workshops were held so far, 4 in Lebanon and 3 in Egypt, in several districts in those 2 countries. We have received very encouraging feedbacks from participants. Many have started to use these materials in their churches and communities. We are very glad to witness how the Lord is using these materials to draw many to Himself. Many were encouraged to take the step to follow Jesus Christ. Many were baptized. These courses are motivating people to respond to the call of the gospel. We are looking forward to many more blessed workshops in partnership with the Christianity Explored Ministries in the coming future.
I was happy to participate in baptism of people who just came to faith through Bible study, Gospel of Mark. Thanks God for this.
People are coming to faith in Christ through churches that are using Christianity Explored resources. Since 2003, the Markham Bible Chapel has seen more than 100 people come to faith in Christ through Christianity Explored. They are even reaching the new Chinese immigrants that are now moving into the community. You also help us equip individuals like Joe in Greenville, South Carolina. Joe used Christianity Explored one-to-one with a work colleague this year, and he was overjoyed to see that friend come to faith in Christ. Thank you.
Mia bonga.
Obrigado.
Muchas gracias.
Good evening, everyone. I have 2 favourite programmes on the BBC Radio 4 network. That probably says something about the age and stage I'm at. 2 favourite programmes on BBC Radio 4 these days. I wonder if you know them. One is called Crossing Continents. So that's a Saturday morning programme about foreign affairs. And the other is called From Our Own Correspondent, where no less than Kate Adie takes us around the world from the safety of the studio and introduces us to BBC reporters all over the world who share the stories of what is happening in their regions. And I am beside myself with excitement tonight because I get to present my own combination of Crossing Continents and From Our Own Correspondents. I want to introduce you to 4 people who are going to come and join me on these stools here. First of all, will you give a very warm welcome from North London, a lady with a very special interest in East Asia, your very own, well known to everybody here, Mei Ling Routley. Let's welcome Mei Ling as she comes up. And then all the way from Bedford, with a heart that beats for the Middle East, please welcome Yolanda Ibbott. Thank you. From the Middle East to West 1, all the way from 2 blocks west in the CEM office, our operations manager, Luann Enns. Come and join us, Luann. There you go. And then last but certainly not shortest, courtesy of Great Western Railway, great to have him back in the UK. We welcome the International Ministry for the International Director for Prison Ministry, the gentle giant of CEM, Steve James. Now let me just furnish you with a couple of microphones, the better to hear you. I'll give you one to you, Luann. And I'm going to begin with you, Luanda. We actually, due to cutbacks that are only...
Yolanda, not Luanda.
No,
this
sorry.
This is Luann.
Luann and Joanna.
That was a joke.
Yes, certainly. Excellent. So, Isabel, tell us...
Yes, George.
Yolanda, when I think of you, my abiding memory of you was as we got off a minibus with an armed guard in the middle of a 3-lane each way dual carriageway in a busy town, And as the traffic was stopped to allow us to cross the road, all of us, the rest of us were all pretty freaked out. You looked as if it was another day at the office for you. I mean, why would that be, and what on earth was going on? Can you remember?
I'm just not afraid anyway. I'm like the lady on the back row. I'm just calm all the time. No, it's because I'm a bit blonde and I didn't realise that we were under armed guard. Or that the man in the front of the carriage with the very dark sunglasses, carrying what actually turned out to be a massive gun, was supposedly there to protect us. I had no idea.
He just made
I
us
thought
more
we were going for ice cream.
He just made us more of a target. But they then took us into a restaurant, and of course they did a security sweep of the restaurant first of all, and everyone who was enjoying their Sunday lunch was thinking, celebrities are coming in. They were gutted when it was us who appeared. But anyway, it was what were we doing there?
It's all true. And I actually thought these security guards were there because they thought we were dodgy, but it turned out that it was a requirement of the British government.
Yeah.
So it took me the whole trip to realise that actually it was quite dangerous. We were in the Upper Nile, and again it took me a long while to realise that that's in southern Egypt, because the Nile travels southwards. And we were in the Upper Nile. It's 5 hours south of Cairo, in Egypt. And it's an area that's it is very dangerous. We also found out after the event, only 10 days beforehand, Christians had been murdered in that region. The Muslim Brotherhood are very active there, and hence the requirement for the armed guard. And we were there with a very expert Christianity Explored teacher, and who was training about 100...
Brian McDowell.
Yes,
that's him.
Brian McDowell. No, it was with Craig, and they were running a Christianity Explored, one of the 7 workshops that the lady from the Middle East was speaking about. We were running one of those workshops for about 100 Christian pastors, youth leaders within that region in Egypt.
Now, when we think about the Middle East and North Africa, probably what is synonymous with that territory is the thought of age-old conflict. But the picture is more complex than that and more encouraging than that. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, Yolanda?
Yeah, it is. One of the big complaints when we go to the Middle East is that they feel that in the West we think to be Arabic. I mean, the key thing about this region, you can see on the map, it's known as MENA, Middle East and North Africa. The key thing is that most of them are Arabic-speaking or Farsi, Persian. And the wonderful thing is that we've got Christianity Explored translated into both of those languages. And they translate across all of those nations. But when you live there, we feel in the West that to be Arabic means to be Muslim. Whereas in fact, that's not true. In the Lebanon, 40% of the population would identify themselves as Christian by birth, I should say. In Syria, in Jordan, in Egypt, about 10% of the population are Christian, plus many other religions. But it is fair to say that it is predominantly Muslim in that region.
Still a Muslim majority region. So how are people coming to know the Lord Jesus in that setting?
So the really encouraging news from that region is that there are 2 main groups. I've said about that there are, say, for example, 40% who are born Christian in Lebanon, or those who are born Christian. It is one of the most ancient Christian cultures in the world. Many, many are nominal. They are of Catholic or Coptic or Assyrian or all sorts of denominations, but they are born Christian. They're not born again Christians. And so much like in our own country, the evangelical church is much, much smaller. And Christianity Explored is being used with that section of the church. I was just there. You were teaching these pastors, and they are evangelical Coptic Christians. And that is how Christianity Explored is being used to reach out to those that are born Christian but have not known a spiritual conversion.
It's absolutely thrilling work. Thank you so much for that, Yolanda. Well,
Do you
we're
want me
thinking
to tell you about the other bit, or we'll do that later?
We'll maybe come back to that just a little bit later on. Thinking about difficult territories where it's hard to be a Christian, I want to come to you, Luann, because you've become our China correspondent. And I wonder if you could just paint a little sketch for us of some of the complexities of the Christian experience there, and also some of it was great to be there in the autumn, but just share a little bit about what we found there and what's happening there.
Yeah, I'd love to. It was a real honor to be able to travel with Craig and Ian and Mei Ling. She'll tell you more about that later, but to East Asia in November, and we stopped in to China for just a few days on that trip, and met with some friends there, and the people who have been using Christianity Explored resources, and it was a real eye-opener for me, and humbling really to see people who are in these small church communities that have to meet quite under careful circumstances, and just to see how encouraged they are to have this resource that is in their language, that they can be encouraged and to deepen their faith. So I think, like Yolanda was saying, it's similar in China. The Christianity Explored materials are a real blessing to the church in helping people who have come to faith, but to grow in their knowledge of the gospel. And so that's been really encouraging.
Yeah, it was astounding to discover, for example, in the city we were in, that there's a circuit almost around the city of believers meeting, and they don't know about the other groups, but they all meet at the one time, and they kind of know they're there. They're praying for each other, but they don't know who's there, and they're using CE material, and it just is so humbling and so astounding just to see that happening. Now, do you have a message for us or a summary that you want to share with us from what has been sent to us in recent days in terms of an email or something like that?
We do have some friends that we pray for and who are sharing the resources with others in the underground churches, just to pray for her, that the Lord would continue to open opportunities to encourage, and just for safety and for
Marvelous.
For her.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. Now, when we left China, we then came to you, Mei Ling, and you, along with Su Yi, masterminded our Malaysia and Singapore trip. And we know your hospitality here in London is fantastic, but even on the move, Mei Ling has such a gift for warm hospitality, and we greatly appreciated it. East Asia is probably the largest of the regions that we're focusing on tonight as in this particular aspect of our program. Which countries are we hoping to be building relationships with, and are we beginning to see things happening in, Mei Ling?
I think the simple answer is that we would be hoping to establish relations with all the countries in East Asia. As Craig has mentioned, it's a very, very large geographical area. But we have made very good connections with China, as you went out there, and then to Hong Kong, South Korea. You've been there twice.
Yeah.
Then to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and recently a very small part of Cambodia. But we would be hoping to widen grow that out there. And one way we're doing this is through our translations. We've translated the Christianity Explored materials into Mandarin and also to Bahasa Malaysia. We have other translations like Bahasa Iban and also Tamil, which we're doing now.
And that's really just begun to happen. It seems to us East Asia has just opened up to us in this respect in the last year or so now, and things are beginning to happen.
I think the churches there have been using Christianity Explored materials for a long time. It's just that because of the connections with Su Yi of St. Mary's Cathedral in Malaysia, that we've managed to forge further links. It's a very personable sort of experience out there. We tend to make personal relationships, and we meet people personally, and that's how we grow that Christian CE there.
So that's how their relationships begin. That's how we get into countries, just through personal contacts and
personal contacts. You must bear in mind that a lot of students come here to London to study. So when they go back to Malaysia, when they go back to Singapore, to East Asia, one of the ways we bring CE out there is to continue our relations with these students.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mei Ling. Well, thinking about growing networks, Luann, back to you for a moment, because CEM's online presence has strengthened in this last year through collaboration with the Billy Graham Association and so on. Tell us a little bit about that wonderful story.
Yeah, that's a really exciting partnership. I mean, we met the team from the Billy Graham Association. They have an online ministry several years ago, and they expressed an interest in developing an online version of Christianity Explored for their internet evangelism ministry. And the team here, Phil, who's doing the video tonight, and Eileen, one of the gals in the office as well, worked with the team in the US to modify some of the videos, making them just a little bit shorter bits and pieces, and made a really great course. And that launched in September. And we've just been really encouraged up to actually just literally as I was walking out of the door to come over this evening, got an email from the director there saying they'd got over 400 students that have gone through that course, and over 80% of them have been engaging with the questions, either writing answers or directly with a coach that they have that they can chat with. That's just been so encouraging.
That's incredible.
And 120 of those students have actually finished the whole course, which is just a phenomenal completion rate. And so we just continue to pray for that as we just learn in that area. But
Yes.
it's just another way that we can share the gospel.
But that's a very low attrition rate for our online course.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
Marvellous. Thank the Lord for that. Luan, if you can pass the mic to the gentleman on your right there. He's been waiting for his turn coming. He's been desperate for it. Steve, it's great to see you in the UK. And we know you're travelling all the time, serving the Lord in the prisons around the world. How many countries have you been in now, Steve, in this work?
Okay, I've probably been to about 30 countries, but there's more countries because sometimes when I go to train, it's... So for
They're
example,
represented there, yeah.
It was the Pacific Coalition 2 weeks ago. So it was Solomon Islands, Fiji, Guam, and Papua New Guinea. So I got to do 4 countries in one go.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And roughly how many prisons have you been in, if it's not too purient a question? I mean, how many...
How many prisons have I been in?
Yeah, what do you reckon?
I don't normally
It must be in the hundreds, is it, by now?
Well, I don't normally get to go to the prisons when I go and train. In other countries. I train the volunteers of Prison Fellowship.
Sure.
But sometimes they do ask me to go into the prisons. And I've been in some fascinating prisons which would kind of... So, for example, in Brazil, I went to a prison where there's no prison officers. The prison is run by the prisoners. So I've never experienced anything like that in my life.
Wow.
You know? So I do get to go to some prisons.
Have you ever been to Berlin and Glasgow? It's very similar.
But I think mainly my work in the prisons is in the UK, so I get to go in weekly, regularly.
But in terms of when you think about the end result of all that travel and all that work, give us an idea how many prisons are being influenced by that training around the world. It must be.
How many prisons? We're probably up to about 700 prisons.
Incredible.
And growing.
That is thrilling to hear. Now so we think about 700 prisons across the face of the earth, in all kinds of settings and all kinds of places. Steve, is there such a thing as a common prisoner's global experience? I mean, is it different for every prisoner all around the world, or is there a commonality of experience in being incarcerated?
Okay, the commonality. I think there is a commonality. With a prisoner, and I think that commonality, first and foremost, is a loss of freedom. So whenever you talk to a prisoner, it will always be, that they've lost that freedom to be able to walk through a door. So, for example, prisoners can be locked up for 23 hours a day in what, a 6 by 8 foot room. Some countries can be, Philippines, I don't know if anyone's from the Philippines, but you've got something like 20 prisoners, 30 prisoners in one room. All lying on the floor. You don't get to choose who you're locked up with. So, obviously I've been in prison, so I can give you a little bit of a feel of that. You don't know what you're going into. Your safety, you fear for your safety, or anything could happen to you.
So you're just on your nerves all the time, effectively, and it's a dog-eat-dog kind of environment.
And I think as well, what prison does, it evokes in the prisoner things like identity. Who am I? So whatever you were in the world and you go to prison, that can be stripped away, and you begin to question, who am I in this world? You start to ask questions about your future. Is there a future for me? I'm labeled as a prisoner. Am I ever going to get my life back together? Is there hope? Forgiveness.
Amazing.
That's huge in a prisoner, because, you're almost viewed as, once you're a prisoner, you're kind of grouped together, and you're a bit of the bit of scum, and you feel that.
The refuse, absolutely.
And then you're not accepted anymore, and there's all them questions: can I be, accepted back into society? And then obviously the big question, isn't it? God. So I didn't know anything when I was in prison in that sense, you know, about the gospel or anything, and
Sure.
discovering there is forgiveness. You can be right with God. You can go through that.
So it's obviously a massively complex dynamic, physically threatening, psychologically oppressive. How do you begin to helpfully and effectively serve up the gospel in that environment, Steve?
Okay. Mainly we work through chaplaincy. So that's the established kind of, you know, organization in the prison. So chaplaincy's there, and that's globally. And I think the prisoners normally gravitate towards chaplaincy.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking for acceptance. They're looking for that kind of forgiveness and just social life.
Yeah.
Because in some sense, going to chapel, or, you know, gets them out of their cell.
Of course.
Gets them a cup of tea, gets them some biscuits, and I've actually, a lot of prisoners will say they feel safe in chaplaincy.
Chapel.
It's like a haven for them.
Yes.
They feel a sense of God is there. So we access the prisoners through chaplaincy, and obviously we have the prison.
You've
prison
tailored the material. You've spent years on this. Just give us just for those who maybe don't know about that. How have you tailored the Christianity Explored course to make it very relevant to the prison environment?
Okay, so one of the ways that working with Prison Fellowship is they've developed videos specifically prisoner testimony. So just like we're talking about finding out more, the power of story, they've developed these video series which are from prisoners all around the world. So from Tokyo or to Canada, Northern Ireland, Africa. So there's all these prisoners which are talking about their life behind bars, hopelessness, no future, you know, so they're listening to these stories, and all of a sudden they begin to talk about Jesus, how they met with Christ in prison, how their lives changed, even to the point of some people saying, you know, I was sentenced to death, or I was sentenced to 99 years, and yet they're saying, but I found Christ.
It's tremendous. And does that pave the way to open Mark's gospel with them in some way? And how, if there's low literacy and low attention span, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think in essence, the prison edition, it's Mark's gospel, but it's the delivery that's different.
Yeah.
So the delivery, it's very visual. It uses flip chart. It breaks down into smaller kind of sections. Lots of repetition, lots of recapping, going back over what we've done. The visual 3 circles: who, why, and what. Identity, mission, call. So you systematically work through that. And this breaking down to simple questions that would lead into the theme of the session.
Yes.
And then you're kind of giving them one verse of Mark's Gospel, and then you're going, well, let's look at 3 verses and go into smaller groups and then come back and share what you found.
Wonderful. Can you give us I mean, you're a realist and you're a godly guy, and I know we were talking earlier, and you long to know that it's permanent, lifelong work done by the Holy Spirit in people's lives, but are there encouragements for all that sowing that's going on? I mean, are there guys whose lives have been changed? What kind of impact are you sensing is going on there through the PFI work?
There's always encouragement and there's discouragement. I think that's the nature of gospel work. So I was sharing with Craig that one guy was on a course in December. You know, he was genuine, he was moving on, he got the gospel, he was understanding it, and then he went to Christian rehab, he got out of prison, and then someone phoned me up to say it didn't work out, and then he ended up overdosing.
It's agony.
And in that it's quite painful because
it's agony. Yeah.
Because you long to see the lives of prisoners change, their lives touched by Christ, and to come out of prison and make something of their life. So, you know, it's a small percentage, I think, in prison ministry that you see that happening. And I think it's always an encouragement in the sense of if someone moves an inch, it's worth it. If they move 3 inches or they go a yard, because it's about we're sowing the seed. For some people, they're right at the start of the journey. We look at the disciples, don't we, as they journey through Mark's gospel. And I take my encouragement through there. So we love to see fruit and we love to see, you know, that change in people.
Yeah, but I think there's just such authenticity with that. It's just the reality, isn't it, of gospel work in every sense. Thank you so much for that Steve. Let me jump back to Mei Ling, just as we're thinking about aims and hopes and longings for the gospel to get traction in different cultures. What are your hopes and prayers, especially for Malaysia and Singapore in this next coming year or so?
I think the next coming year or so, we'd like to build up what we've started last November. As you know, Craig, Ian, and a couple of us went out there. And that was the first training session we ever had for Christianity Explored in East Asia. It was very well received, so much so that a couple of different churches have invited us to go back there to do further training. So I think the training, I would hope, or we would hope to actually equip the churches better. It's very clear from our interactions with the local church leaders and Christians there that they do love the gospel, they live the gospel. Actually, we would like to equip them to tell the gospel into all the different cultures that are represented there. So
Wonderful.
That would be our hope there.
So that's what we want to be doing, to keep on building relationships and going and
Yes. I mean, I was very
friends.
encouraged to hear that in Uganda you've been going there for 10 years.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we started 1 year and hopefully
Exactly.
we can do that in East
God
Asia
willing.
as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, we love being there. Luann, we don't just in our news programs, we just don't hear enough about Europe these days. So I thought maybe we could just ask you to it's interesting that Donald Tusk does believe in health, that's a good thing. But it'd just be interesting just to hear from you a few headlines on Europe, what's happening there, particularly maybe Albania, where we were focusing on last year.
Yeah, I think that's great. Last year at our Love Live Tell, we had Craig was up with Scott and talked about this project to get CE translated into Albanian. And so like from that time, this time last year, we were just praying for funding.
Yep.
And that came through very shortly after our time together. And that would have been in February. By May, the Albanian Christianity Explored was translated and I think printed just within days before the training conference.
That's right.
And so I asked Arian to send me sort of where have you got to with that? And so in the last, since May, they've resourced 84 churches, trained 300 pastors, given away 2,800 sets of material, completed 43 Christianity Explored courses, and had 77 people accept Christ and at least one baptism.
Isn't that remarkable?
So he
in
sends
under
his,
a year.
Yeah, and he sends his love and his thanks as well. They've also begun translating the Soul and CY material for the
Fabulous.
youth camps, and got their hearts set on discipleship.
That's so
Explored as
encouraging.
well.
So if you were here last year and you heard about Albania, there's much to give thanks to God for in that field, and we're really thrilled and encouraged about that. Thank you so much. Now, Yolanda, let's bring it down to the personal as we wind this up now. What is the impact on an individual believer in a Middle East, North African country as they are given the CE material in their mother tongue to help them go through Mark's Gospel? What does that feel like to them?
I think it's very easy for us here in Britain to take for granted organisations like the Good Book Company, just as an example, but much wider than that, our Christian resources. We have a plethora of resources, and all of it in our mother tongue. We have a world language the whole world speaks. We're famous for being rubbish at foreign languages, aren't we? It's so different when you go to other parts of the world. And I think that just really hit me between the eyes, the hunger that they have. I actually went to a Christian bookshop in Lebanon, in Beirut, and I was just really shocked as I looked across the shelves at all the gaps and the holes. And you could just tell that they'd got a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other. And they just don't have that depth of resources. And on a training course that we went to 2 years ago, also in Egypt, in a different part, one of the pastors during the feedback session, they were asked to raise their hands and say what they'd got most out of it. And he said, we've been praying for 10 years that the Lord would send to us a resource, a tool, so that we could share the gospel. We don't know how to share the gospel well. And he said, we've been praying for 10 years, and now we believe our prayers have been answered. And that's really humbling, isn't it? When we can just go and grab this stuff off the shelves.
That is thrilling to hear. There's another side to this miracle, isn't it? I mean, the work of the gospel is incredible. God at work by his Spirit, through his church, through the gospel. The other side to the miracle is how God bankrolls his mission in the world. And he does it through his people who are impacted by the Spirit and the gospel. If I was here tonight and perhaps like you, just a keen supporter, interested to hear about what's going on, I'd probably be saying, how is all this funded? I mean, up until now, what has been the pattern for that?
Yeah,
Yolanda?
Ian was saying that the organisation has been running for nigh on 20 years. And I guess many of you in the room think, therefore, that we've got this vast bank of supporters. And it will perhaps surprise you to know that the budget for CE is currently around $500,000. And that is largely funded by 100 supporters. And so if you are one of those supporters in the room, you know who you are. We just want to say a massive thank you, because we could not have got here over the last 20 years without your help. Obviously, all through God and through his Spirit, and we're so grateful to him for that. But as we look forward, we've presented to you what the opportunity is around the world, and it is exploding. The even just Arabic, the opportunity is vast. Salsam was on the video saying we've run 7 workshops. Well, there's potential to run 700. Yeah. And all of that costs money. So we're looking to really expand the international ministry and also expand our donor base. And so if you're not one of those 100 in the room, I'd like to speak to you. And it would be wonderful if this evening you would be interested in partnering with us in Christianity Explored. We have very exciting news that we have had some generous donations from trusts and individuals, and we have been able to raise £100,000 of matched funding. So what that means is if anyone is prepared to give any form of regular giving, that amount after gift aid will be matched through this 100,000 fund. So we would like to make we want to be able to claim the 100,000, and we'd like to double it to 200,000. And just to help you, £10 a month, I can do this mental arithmetic. In a year is £120. At the gift aid, we still live in a country where we can get our tax back. That's £150. You can double that to £300. So £10 a month can become £300 to Christianity Explored Ministries. So we would just humbly like to ask you whether you would consider doing that. You're all sitting on a free book that we've given you this evening and a free leaflet. So if you want to have a look at the leaflet, that's all explained inside here. And if you feel moved by God that you can help us in this way, please would you go to the back of the room at the end of this session. And there will be some Christianity Explored staff there to help you. If not, there's an online link at Christianity Explored Ministries, and you can go online. Please do it quickly before you forget, before you get home this evening. That would be great. We are most grateful and very grateful.
That's wonderful, Yolanda. Thank you so much. And I mean, it's a remarkable opportunity. We get to help fill the whole of £100,000 that we're in deficit on, and at the same time attract a match fund of 100,000 going to the international ministry. So that's a phenomenal, eternal investment opportunity. And as we say, we just want hundreds and maybe thousands of believers with a relatively modest monthly amount, and that would be a tremendous joy. So we prayerfully leave that with you. Please thank our friends for being on the panel, and I'd love you now just to take your seats. Very much appreciated.
Okay, well, that is just about it. I found it amazing because most of those stories you've heard, I know well. But just sitting there, listen, I've got the easy job tonight, really. I just smile, say hello and goodbye, really. But just listening to all of those stories, just the weight of all that's happening, I've just found it incredibly humbling, really, I suppose, to feel part of that. So I've found it a huge privilege. So thank you very much for all the people who presented. It's just really humbling to see what's going on. So that's just about it. I need to remind you about, if you want to see some of our guys, that is the table, I think it's at the side actually, rather than the back. So if you want to see any of our guys, they're at the side. The Good Book Company have got books here as well, so if you want to have a look at those, then please do. Really, I just need to say a few thank yous now, as well as to the presenters. Firstly, thank you to all of you for coming, for being here. It's been great having you along. And a special thank you also to all of those who've helped. So firstly to All Souls, and there's all sorts of people here, the staff at All Souls, the PCC for all your support in so many ways over the years, and being able to host here this evening, and really just friendship and partnership that we've experienced over the last 20 years. It has been fantastic. We genuinely could not have, well, we came out of All Souls to start with, but it really does feel like a long-term friendship, and we're so appreciative of it in every way. I'd like to thank my team as well, fantastically supportive this evening, particularly Phil on the PN, also Philip from All Souls. Thanks so much for coming back specially to help us. He left a few years ago and he came back specially he's back on staff here now. So thanks so much for that. And just my team, it's just a privilege having you as part of the team. Great privilege serving alongside you. Good Book Company as well. Thank you for your partnership, Rachel. Brilliant. Thank you for all you've done on that book. James is here tonight as well. So send our best wishes to everybody back at the Good Book Company. And most of all, they won't hear us now, but our helpers downstairs. I did say thank you to Mercedes beforehand, but if we clap really loudly, they're probably still watching that down there. So. Okay, but I guess the biggest thank you really is to God for all that has been accomplished. And it's just been an amazing journey to be part of it. I'm hoping Hugh Palmer is here. Is Hugh here? He is here, yes. I asked him a week ago and I forgot to mention it to him again today. Hugh's the rector here. He's rector, friend, mentor, trustee of Christianity Explored. I say friend, he's a Brighton supporter, I'm a Crystal Palace supporter. So for those of you who know your football, then that's a very rare thing to be friends with each other. But Hugh, just give thanks to God for us and say goodbye.
Thing to do, isn't it? Well, let's give that. What else can we do after all we've heard tonight? We're thrilled at All Souls to be home to see, but any Christian's got to be thrilled when you hear something of what we've heard tonight. And as Ian rightly says, our thrilledness ought to give way to thanks to the one who's made it possible. Gracious God, thank you so much for what we've heard, for the privilege of just being able to listen in to so many stories, from the Finding More book to the Pakistan ministry, for ministries in prison and in MENA countries and in East Asia. Thank you for the staff and the team and the volunteers that have made that possible. But thank you above all that it's your gospel story. Your gospel story that spreads right around the world. Your gospel story that catches each one of us up into it. And thank you for those we've heard of tonight whom you've captured into that saving rescue. We rejoice in that. We rejoice in the way that you've kept your keeping hand on Christianity Explored ministries. You provided for them, and we just commit this year ahead to you as well. Continue to bless, and we want to continue to rejoice. For Jesus' name's sake.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.